This chart shows the estimated net worth of Elon Musk, but if you look closely, the vast majority of this multi-hundred-billion-dollar pie is locked up in illiquid stock, not cash. He is what financial analysts call an equity billionaire. Because his fortune is tied directly to shares in companies like Tesla and SpaceX, he is technically cash poor. He cannot actually spend this wealth to buy groceries or real estate without selling off his shares or taking out massive loans. When people see a net worth with 12 zeros attached, they often assume it comes from a massive inheritance or a frictionless tech miracle. To understand how he commands fleets of electric cars and orbital rockets today, we have to strip away the billionaire mythos. We have to look at the unorthodox, dangerous, and gritty ways he scraped together his first dollars. Before the corporate boardrooms, Musk grew up in Pretoria, South Africa, in an environment fractured by his parents' early divorce. School offered no refuge. He endured severe, relentless bullying, culminating in an incident where a group of students beat him and threw him down a flight of concrete stairs, leaving him hospitalized. He retreated into encyclopedias and science fiction, spending hours in a trance-like state to visualize complex ideas. These years of social isolation and physical recovery built a high tolerance for hardship, a trait that allowed him to endure extreme professional pressure decades later. By age 12, he found his first financial victory. After teaching himself BASIC in just 3 days, he coded a space shooter game called Blastar and sold it to a computer magazine for $500. At 17, he moved to Canada and took on grueling physical labor to survive. He found a job paying $18 an hour that required putting on a hazmat suit and crawling through dark, steam-filled industrial pipes to shovel glowing residue out of a lumber mill boiler room. Looking for a way out of the boiler room, he and his brother began researching local business executives. They took turns cold calling them to ask for lunch, eventually securing a meeting with a top executive at the Bank of Nova Scotia, who gave Musk a white-collar internship. These early jobs proved a crucial operational trait. He was perfectly willing to endure severe discomfort and risk absolute social rejection to generate foundational capital. He eventually transferred to the University of Pennsylvania. He immediately needed to generate rent money, but he was determined to avoid massive student debt. Operating out of his dorm room, he set up a side business building customized hardware rigs for fellow students and removing viruses from their computers. But his highest yield hustle was far more unorthodox. He and a friend rented a cheap 10-bedroom frat house off campus, blacked out the windows with trash bags, and ran an unlicensed underground nightclub where Musk stayed completely sober to manage the chaos. Managing hundreds of college students at these parties allowed him to make an entire month's rent in a single night. He was already bootstrapping his way forward through high-margin, low-overhead operations. In 1995, he arrived in Silicon Valley just as the internet boom was taking off. He enrolled in a PhD program at Stanford, but dropped out after exactly 2 days. Instead, he used $28,000 from his father to start a web directory company called Zip2. The bootstrap phase was defined by extreme poverty. He and his brother slept on futons in their small office, showered at the local YMCA. They spent their nights writing tangled code on a single shared computer. To secure VC funding, he relied on smoke and mirrors. He built an elaborate, oversized casement around a basic PC and placed it on a wheeled base to trick potential investors into thinking they were looking at a massive supercomputer. The tactic worked, and the startup grew. In 1999, the early hardware giant Compaq acquired Zip2 for $307 million. At 27 years old, Musk walked away with a $22 million cut. Zip2 established his defining operational template. He would endure intense personal deprivation and use relentless salesmanship to force a massive liquidity event. Instead of retiring on that $22 million, he immediately rolled the majority of it into founding X.com, aiming to disrupt the slow, legacy banking industry. After a fierce, expensive marketing war with a rival startup called Confinity, the two companies agreed to a forced merger. The resulting combined entity would eventually be known as PayPal. His tenure there was brutal. His demanding, micromanaging leadership style sparked an internal revolt, and while he was away on his honeymoon, the board organized a corporate coup and ousted him as CEO. A CEO is the highest-ranking executive responsible for the overall management of a company. Despite losing executive control, he wisely held on to his majority shares. When eBay purchased PayPal for $1.5 billion in 2002, Musk received a staggering $180 million payout after taxes. This payout gave Musk a $180 million war chest. For the first time, he possessed the personal liquidity required to fund large-scale ventures in aerospace and automotive manufacturing without relying on outside investors. By his early 30s, Musk had won the Silicon Valley game. He was a multimillionaire who could have easily spent the rest of his life in total luxury. Instead, he risked everything. He poured $100 million of his own money into a new aerospace venture called SpaceX, and millions more into an electric car startup named Tesla. The 2008 financial crisis pushed him to the absolute edge. Following 3 consecutive rocket launch failures, and with Tesla on the verge of total collapse, he was forced to sell off personal assets, including his prized McLaren F1 sports car, just to meet payroll and keep the companies alive for a few more days. Today, he sits at the top of the global wealth rankings. But that status isn't an accident of birth. It is the result of an almost irrational willingness to repeatedly bet his entire net worth on his own ability to survive catastrophic failure.